Thank you, Ned. Stephen, Clare, and I are thrilled at our good fortune that Morri Creech was able to make the trip up to Baltimore from North Carolina. And he really is the nicest guy in the world, super talented musician and an extraordinary poet. It's good that he's a nice guy because he has a very annoying quality. It's not his fault, but whenever his name comes up in literary circles, someone will say, "Oh, you know Morri Creech," and there'll be a hush, and people will go, "Oh, yes, he's very good." And whenever I'm present, I always feel a little seasick. But I'm of the Gore Vidal school that if a friend of mine succeeds, a little piece of me dies. But I'm a huge fan of Morri Creech, and I have been for a long time, so the fact that he's here reading today is super special. I think we're all extremely fortunate to be hearing him. He's the author of 5 collections of poetry, including The Sleep of Reason, a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, Blue Rooms, and The Sentence, a recipient of NEA and Ruth Lilly fellowships, as well as North Carolina and Louisiana artists grants. He teaches at Queen's University of Charlotte. Please welcome Morri Creech.
Thanks so much, I appreciate it. And thank you all for your time and attention. I appreciate it. I'm going to take my glasses off, at which point I won't be able to see you anymore. So, goodbye. I'm going to read. I'm going to start by reading a poem by the incomparable American poet Joseph Harrison, and this is a poem called "River of Song." Who said that? Surfacing from sleep, seeing the curtains fringed with light, I hear a music fading. Whose? Part mind, part someone's. Cold and deep, the word flow runs, and dark as night. The dead keep singing. They don't sleep. We wake, diminishing and right. I hear a music playing. Whose? On runs the river, dark and deep, and cold as interstellar night. I'm just going to read some poems from The Sentence, and so I'll start with the first poem is called Shadow. He got up. It was there, and it was growing from much the same place it had been before. It had followed him to sleep without his knowing, and once he rose, had crept up to the door. In much the same place it had been before, it skulked behind him while he brushed his teeth. And when he turned, it crept up to the door, a stain that seemed to spread from underneath the parted curtains. While he brushed his teeth, he thought of all he'd come to know, which wasn't much. It spread from underneath his being anywhere the rooms were lit, the one thing that he'd come to know. Sometimes it stretched out next to him, a double that kept close to him when the room was lit, or waited for him in the dark without trouble. Somehow it seemed unsettling, like a double exposure, or the outline of the moon. Not waiting for him in the dark without trouble, but giving rise to doubts he felt at noon, disturbing as the outline of the moon. For a while, he simply put it from his mind. Still, though, he felt it nagging him at noon, an existential wake he trailed behind him. He tried hard to put it from his mind. He focused on his work, his kids, his wife, as though he didn't trail its wake behind the half of him he'd come to call my life, the part that had a job, 3 kids, a wife, and here and there a good time with his friends. This was the half he'd come to call his life. The other kept pursuing its own ends. On nights when he was out late with his friends, it opened beneath the street lamp like a rose and seemed to be pursuing other ends. Where does it go, he thought, when my eyes close? It opened beneath the street lamp like a rose and followed him to sleep without his knowing. What happens to it after my eyes close? The question troubled him, and it kept growing. This one is called Grievance. I am tired of having a name. Every time I wake, it grinds its teeth like the gears of a moving van, and it smells of soot, like the sweat of being a man, and it weighs like a stone I carry, for no one's sake. In the courthouse, it echoes down the long corridors, and it creaks in the bed springs of cheap rooms, and it croons in bars. It whistles up to the gaps between the stars, and down to the truck stop bathrooms' piss-stained floors. I have betrayed it to the dark when there was no one to blame, and whispered it seductively into the ear of danger. But I am tired, and I want to be done with it for good. I will give it up. I will answer to nothing. I will be a stranger. I will put on the silence like an executioner's hood. Here it is, poor neck squirming on the rock, my name. This next poem, when I was a little kid, my grandmother had a beauty shop, those are the hairstyles, beauty shop next to my house, and I would spend a lot of time playing in there, sitting in the swivel chair and spinning around, and looking in the handheld mirror at the mirror behind me and seeing my face and head recede infinitely toward the back of the mirror, and that is a combination of science and narcissism that I was really into at the time. This poem is about that effect, and it's called Mirrors. One afternoon, when snow fell on the lawns and winter light grew thinner in the trees, he stood in his grandmother's beauty parlor, and over his shoulder trained a handheld mirror at the mirror behind him. The wall clock was silent. The domes of the big hair dryers gathered dust. What he saw both entertained and startled him. His head and face repeated in a corridor of bizarre, ever-shrinking iterations, of duplicate geometry of cells, each one of them turned toward its opposite in infinitely receding parallels. It confirmed his suspicions. He was himself, of course, but he was other people too. The strangers that he knew he didn't know, the ones whose backs were always turned to him, and those whom he was sure he recognized, the boy in the beauty parlor and the one who looked out at rough shadows on the sea, the kid who snickered while he took communion, and the other one who daydreamed in his room, as well as all of those he knew from moods, whose vagaries had made him speculate about the whims behind their random weather. Who was it that kept staring at him now? He watched this boy, whom he had studied closely, in endless ramifications in a glass, and mused in his own prism of reflection while the second hand advanced on the clock. Everyone he was sunk in a mirror, myriads of himself diminishing farther and farther toward the edge of vision, until, anonymous, they disappeared. I've got a sequence of sonnets, 3 of them in the book called Time. One's past, one's present, and one's future. And I will read past and future. And I don't know why I'm not going to read present. Who cares about the present? Why live in the present? This is called Time, Past. This sonnet you once wrote is finished now. Hospital bracelet on the moment's wrist. Item not found on the official list. I am the snicker when you take your bow. Call me the whisper of the wings, the bays on which the dice get thrown, the backward look. I'm the initials in the ledger book, the lengthening sentence you worry phrase by phrase. My accusations glare from every mirror. I know you well and answer to your name. Each time you smile, my wrinkles show up clearer. Each time you break an oath, I take the blame. And though you don't mistake me for a friend, trust me, I'm all you'll think of at the end. And this one is called Future. I will be good. I will behave next time. I will be more discerning when I choose. I will swear off the gambling and the booze and make a full confession of my crime. I will repair the foundation, brick by brick, to keep my cut price battle from collapse. I will step clear of all tripwires and traps. I will work hard and not be such a prick. And won't things be much different tomorrow? And will I nose the trough to get my fill? And won't I be relieved of every sorrow? And won't there be some cash left in the till? So everyone thinks they have time to borrow, whispering down to the last, I will, I will. Thank you. There's a story behind this poem, but it isn't very interesting. So I'll tell it. It's called House Fire at the Sea. Neither was sure what drew them toward the sand to watch the fire. Along the beach, the smoke had plumed across the roofs that night to wake them in their own house farther up the strand. They'd walked a quarter mile to see it burn, while a few curious strangers tagged along, and the surf broke like there was nothing wrong, like the house fire was none of its concern. No one could tell what started it. The neighbors, trailing their bathrobes, had each made a guess, but no one knew, or no one would confess. Beyond, the firemen still performed their labors. The woman looked to sea and watched how flame reflected on the breaker's cresting rim, glimmered past the tide line, and grew dim. With every wave, the fire shone much the same. The man had turned his back to her. He spoke to someone out of view, but she could hear his voice and see his hands quick in the air, either making a point or fanning away the smoke. How strange, she thought, to see a fire so close to the one element that could have tamed it. The place went up before the owners named it, she heard the man declare as the flames rose. They'd stayed in a house like this when they first met. 3 floors and a veranda. Not so far from the boardwalk, which had a daiquiri bar where they drank after swimming, hair still wet. Later on, they would make love, talk, or read. The sea had been the source of all they shared. And if they had been careless, no one cared. She'd never felt so captive or so freed. The fire deepened the shadows where he stood. He looked the same as far as she could tell. And if some things had passed between them, well, talking about them now would do no good. The firemen climbed their ladders in the dark, but the house was empty. No one had been there. All that the rest of them could do was stare. The thick smoke hid the room, but left no mark. I got I have some prose poems in the book, and I thought I'd read one of those. My wife likes it when I tell stories, and she likes it when I do it in prose for some reason. She's a novelist. This is called Condition. At night in the emergency room, beneath the flicker of fluorescent lights, a man sits in a plastic chair and waits. He hears the entrance door open and close behind him, and the faint squeak of orthopedic shoes. The man squints at the forms, then fills out the column of empty boxes. What symptoms does he have? He has a family and a mortgage. A tire swings dead weight hanging from the oak tree in his yard. He has occasional bouts of clarity, followed by days of deep, persistent doubt. A woman in the seat across from him riffles the pages of a magazine. The man asks what condition brought her there. "Something is killing me," she says. "Whatever it is, I've had it since I was a child." Another man chimes in. "I get night sweats thinking about the dawn. I lie awake, propped on a pillow, chewing my nails in dread." Others in the room stare at their phone screens or down at their shoes. The hands spin slowly on the clock above them. "Maybe I should just leave," the man thinks. "Maybe I'm not really sick at all." He presses his hand to his forehead. "There's no use trying to diagnose yourself," the woman whispers, looking pale and shaken. "All you can do is wait, like everyone, until the night nurse comes with her chart and calls your name." I'll just read a couple more. This one is called Witness. Your uncles leave you waiting by the shoulder while they hunt deer in the woods in winter snow. You've paced the blacktop's edge an hour or so. The sun's just halfway up. It's getting colder. Their orange jackets flash between the pines. Beagles are on the scent to flush the buck out toward the highway past the pickup truck, where the men will shoot it on the lower lines. The morning sky snags in your memory. Stars that glint like mica flakes in the blue background a quarter moon showed through, above the route for cross to Ellery. You hear wheels in the distance and you think, what if a deer comes bounding toward the road? Just then the car appears like time has slowed. A Pontiac Firebird slipping on the brink of the iced bridge that spans Jim Compey's Craig Creek, his chainless tires chewing the roadside gravel. A tree snaps like a judge slamming a gavel, and you can see the skid marks where they streak, maybe 10 feet away from where you stand. The tire tracks aiming toward the distant trees, the car flipped over, leaking antifreeze. Out of the windshield juts a woman's hand. You scramble closer to the wreck and see she's still a starlight, pinned there. She can't move. Somewhere a gear is clicking in its groove. The radio plays Tom Petty's Refugee. You listen for her breath, but it gets slower. The way the glass chips and the snow are lit seems beautiful, a fact you don't admit. It's dark inside. You can't tell if you know it. And that's when it capers into the road. The deer. It stands there a minute, startled. Then it runs before the men come shouting with their guns. Just how long you stand watching isn't clear. Years from now, when you recall this morning, it won't be a blur of metal you think of first. How the Firebird veered off the road, then burst into the screen of pine trees without warning. Not the cold or what song the radio had on. It won't even be the dead girl they pulled out of a strew of glass. No, think about the deer, how it glanced up at you and was gone. I'll read just two. This is called Burning the Leaves. Dad wheelbarrows the leaves into the ditch. November, and the ground is tinged with frost, air heavy with smoke, the autumn colors rich. He squints at the camera, looking vaguely lost. Mom leans against the handle of her rake next to the trailer, thinking God knows what, as though the day were just some big mistake. A marriage and a prim lawn are what she's got, plus a kid who whizzes by on roller skates, small at the road's edge, but there all the same. She looks at something far away, waits. The years crowd in around the picture frame. The dead leaves at her feet keep piling higher, and in the background, you can see the fire. This is the last The last poem, I'm going to read the last poem from the sentence, and it is the last poem of the sentence, and it is called The Sentence. He sat at the desk across from his reflection, watching him where it hung above the mantel, and studied the hand there, writing what he wrote. Something about the ocean in midsummer when he was a child, the glint, the flecks of spume tossed up where breakers thundered on the rocks. The truth was a sentence they composed together, for no one else but the quiet of the house. The tide he dreamt and the one he could remember, subject and verb and the sun-touched swells they made of the past itself now blended with invention, his left hand moving the right hand in the mirror, and time, a distance in the room between them, spread out there like a childhood shore where waves broke on the sand and retreated to the green sea. Thank you.
Thank you, Morri.